Anthroposophy. I now want to suggest two books. Unfortunately, you can't get these on the internet, and all I can do is suggest them. And the reason I want to suggest them is because I want to widen our idea of what anthroposophy is. If the only way we think about anthroposophy is that it is Rudolf Steiner all the time, 24/7, then I think we're going to get really confused. That sort of thinking is thinking something impossible. Rudolf Steiner didn't invent anthroposophy. Anthroposophy is a characteristic of the mind that the individual I can develop itself. Some people come to it instinctively. For example, Coleridge, S.T. Coleridge, and Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, were both anthroposophists before Steiner was born. Von Barfield wrote a book about Coleridge called What Coleridge Thought. Here's a bit of Emerson. Nature is mind incarnated. Oh, I'm going to get that wrong. I'm going to pause for a minute and get it right. I'll be right back. Okay, back again. Check my clock. I'm going to have things wrong here, but that's all right. Emerson writes at age 33 in his essay Nature, which was published in 1836. Nature is the incarnation of a thought, and turns to thought again as ice becomes water and gas. The world is mind precipitated, and the volatile essence is forever escaping again into the state of free thought. 50 years later, in The Theory of Knowledge Implicit in Goethe's World Conception, published in 1886, Steiner writes, "What takes place in human consciousness is the interpretation of nature to itself. Thought is the last member of a series of processes whereby nature is formed." Now the point was, of course, that Emerson and Coleridge were pre-Steiner anthroposophists, and that not all people who are, shall we say, natural anthroposophists are going to, quote, lean on or otherwise need Rudolf Steiner. What makes someone an anthroposophist in this wider sense is their efforts at what we might call scientific cognition. Now, they don't quite get the core that I just talked about in real anthroposophy, which is this metamorphosis of thinking. But nonetheless, very talented people have taken an interest in human spiritual life. I want to talk about their two books. The first one is this, On Becoming an Alchemist, by Catherine MacCoun. Now there's a review on my website which goes into great details, and I just want to mention it here so that people can appreciate that there's a great deal outside of the anthroposophical movement in parallel with it that people who are interested in the spiritual future of humanity should be cognizant of. I'm going to pause again for a minute here because I want to check the time on the tape. Now, Miss MacCoun is a unique and remarkable personality. She has a rich spiritual life, and she was part of an internet discussion group that I was a member of for several years. You'll get details of all this in my essay on Catherine MacCoun and her book On Becoming an Alchemist. Dennis Klochek, in an essay that he wrote based on a talk that he gave in 2005 to the annual general meeting, the essay was published in the News Remember, called Steiner an Alchemist. Now, I'm not saying that Dennis meant the same thing as Catherine means. I'm just saying that there's, shall we say, interesting parallels that could be taken account of. Now, what's the basic thing that makes Catherine books interesting? Well, in a certain sense, one of the things that Steiner wanted the Anthroposophical Society to engender and become part of was a meeting place of different spiritual streams. And in Catherine we have a very definite spiritual stream. Her biography starts her in Catholicism, takes her from there to the Tibetan Buddhism of Lama Chogyam Trungpa, and then from there she encounters Anthroposophy and participates in many anthroposophical discussion lists. And since she's a person of deep and rich spiritual, clairvoyant spiritual experience, all of this pervades the work that she's done in this book. Now it is influenced by Tibetan Buddhism, and the details that I talk about shows that it's not particularly of the same stream, but if one of the things that the watchers of this video want to do is to recognize other streams that run parallel to and are, shall we say, somewhat integrated with the stream that Steiner carried as Anthroposophy, then we need to include such people as Catherine MacCoun. It would be nice if she was invited by the councils in America to give lectures. She's an extraordinary personality, very gifted. What she writes is probably some of the wisest sort of normal things I've ever read about spiritual life for regular people. She uses the language of alchemy to illuminate the most ordinary experiences of our life and show how all of us are on a transformative spiritual path, and if we would just wake up to it, there's all kinds of interesting things that we can do. People might enjoy reading her.